Judith Phillips is a professional photographer and a former friend of the Ramseys. She captured this portrait of Patsy and the kids in the weeks before Jonbenet's murder. Some 20 months later, her faith in the Ramseys has turned to doubt. Her confidence in the DA's office has turned to suspicion.
I think there are people who are very concerned about the integrity of the investigation.
So concerned that people who've remained silent in the past are now speaking out. Former Boulder Police Detective Steve Thomas resigned in disgust and harshly criticized Boulder DA Alex Hunter's handling of the case. Earlier this week, former Ramsey friend Fleet White wrote a public letter calling for the appointment of a special prosecutor. And one day later, Judith Phillips echoed that demand.
People better say something now before it's too late.
The public letters and most recently the published reports that a 911 tape may contradict earlier statements by the Ramseys are the latest in a series of leaks and statements from insiders who appear to be trying to get information into the public spotlight before they're bound by the secrecy of the grand jury.
Clearly the trial of the Ramseys has already begun. It's just being fought right now in the court of public opinion.
Attorney Dan Kaplis believes leaks from law enforcement and public letters from former Ramsey friends are designed to put pressure on Hunter's office, to press for an indictment, and to pressure the grand jurors themselves to demand one if Hunter doesn't.
We appear to have some people from both sides trying to influence the grand jurors and Alex Hunter through the media.
I'm encouraging other people to speak up if they have concerns about this case, because the worst thing to do is to lie still and say nothing.
The report says that there was an abrasion on the hymen, but it appears. Now, it is not necessarily normal to have an abrasion. I would say it's probably not necessarily uncommon.
What could that be caused by, just in the course of...
With an abrasion. Now, it is not necessarily normal to have an abrasion. And again, we go back to that, what caused the abrasion. And I don't know what to make of the findings around the vagina, other than to tell you that to me they're not specific for sexual abuse. And those findings are consistent with, some of the findings are consistent with some sort of trauma, but I don't know when that occurred or how it occurred. And there's nothing within the autopsy that makes that clear.
Dr. Richard Krugman is trying to determine if Jonbenét Ramsey was ever sexually abused.
I've been asked to look at the case from the perspective of someone who does clinical child abuse work.
We don't like making that request came from Boulder District Attorney Alex Hunter. 2 weeks ago, he asked Dr. Krugman to review the facts and tell investigators what he believes happened to Jonbenét Ramsey.
I certainly don't have enough information to make any sort of diagnosis in this case at this point. Whether it's physical abuse alone, sexual abuse alone, or some combination of physical and sexual abuse, I don't think anyone, I certainly won't comment on at this point.
For Dr. Krugman, determining how Jonbenét was abused will include talking with detectives and reviewing her medical records, including her autopsy.
Whenever one is confronted with a child abuse case, one needs to collect all of the information that's available and then come up with, in medical parlance, a diagnosis as to whether this is physical abuse or sexual abuse or both or some other forms of abuse or neglect.
So was Jonbenét Ramsey sexually abused? For weeks, sources have told reporters yes, but it's never been officially confirmed by either Boulder's police chief or district attorney. Maybe that's because experts like Dr. Krugman have yet to reach a conclusion. Phil LeBeau, News 4 Boulder Valley Bureau.
The latest comes from the mountain town of Rollinsville, west of Boulder, a place where residents Bill and Janet McReynolds are known as Santa and Mrs. Claus.
Merry Christmas.
They had been at the Ramsey home 2 nights before the murder of 6-year-old Jonbenét, entertaining at a Christmas party. Police recently realized some strange parallels. One of the McReynolds daughters and a friend of hers were abducted in Longmont in 1974. The McReynolds girl witnessed her friend's molestation, but nobody was ever arrested. It happened on December 26th. 22 years to the day before Jonbenét's body was discovered in the basement of the Ramsey family home. And Janet McReynolds wrote a play in 1976 called Hey Rube. It was about the sexual assault, torture, and murder of a girl. The child's body was found in a basement. Janet McReynolds declined to be interviewed on camera this day, saying she doesn't want to add more to the speculation surrounding the murder. She also said they were cooperating with police and has said that she believes the questioning and samples were for the purposes of exclusion. It has followed one of the more revealing weeks in the case. District Attorney Alex Hunter said Thursday that they are still questioning the alibi of John Ramsey's son, John Andrew.
We have more work to do on John Andrew's alibi.
The family has said he was in Atlanta at the time of the murder. Police are still checking.
It's a headline that hasn't been seen in almost 3 years.
She steps forward to help protect living children who are still being systematically brutalized, abused, and exploited.
The new lead is from a 37-year-old California woman who says for years she has been physically and sexually abused by adults who stayed at holiday parties after other guests had left for the night. She told Boulder detectives she believes there are similarities between the sexual techniques at these sessions and what happened to Jonbenét Ramsey. Police say Jonbenét was strangled with a garrote. This woman believes the 6-year-old was killed accidentally during a party when some kind of sexual choking technique went wrong. She's represented by Boulder attorney Lee Hill.
She also feels strongly that if this information had been made public earlier, that at least one little life would have been saved.
Boulder District Attorney Alex Hunter is quoted as saying the woman is very believable. And he says, I believe the Boulder Police Department is thoroughly investigating the lead recently given to them.
It's too early to say that this is a huge break in the case. I mean, the sexual abuse theory in the Ramsey murder has been talked about for 3 years. It's not new.
Legal analyst Andrew Cohen says what's interesting is that Boulder's district attorney is taking the woman's story seriously. Jonbenét was found dead over 3 years ago in the basement of her Boulder home on the day after Christmas. No one has been arrested. Over the years, there have been few leads, but there continues to be lots of surprises. In Boulder, Irene O'Connor reporting.
Marilyn Vanderburg says her family appears to be as similar to the Ramsey family as one may find. A successful father, a life in beauty pageants. The similarities are not lost on the Boulder Police Department. Investigators in the Jonbenét Ramsey murder case came to Denver twice to interview Vanderburg as a resource person. Investigators trying to paint a picture of the kind of person who would assault and murder a little girl. As Miss Colorado and Miss America, Vanderburg appeared to have it all back in 1958. Years later, she would reveal dark family secrets, sexual abuse by her father. It started when she was just 5 years old. After speaking of her abuse in 161 cities over the years, she still finds it a challenge to convince the public incest can happen in any family.
I think it's very difficult for people to believe that incest, if it is, can be in such an outstanding, Hollywood-looking, perfect family. I know that it was true for me and my family. There were people who would stop me and say, you know, I don't believe your father could have done this. And I think the thing that turned me to the cameras and away from the cameras when this finally came forward is that I realized that if people weren't going to believe me, a child didn't have a chance.
Vanderburg tells News 4 she answered many questions by Boulder police about her own history of sexual abuse, including the high price her family paid to protect the family image. Vanderburg's mother never accepted Marilyn's accusations.
And my mother, to her death, defended my father. If incest was in our family and she took a look at that, then she was neither a wife nor a mother. Then she was, her whole life was a sham.
Whatever comes out about Jonbenet's murderer, Vanderburg says the little girl should never be forgotten. Jonbenét, she says, should remain a powerful symbol. She died at the age of 6. That's the same age that, according to national research, girls are most often violated.
Knowing that, we need to really use whatever information we can get to protect our most vulnerable children, the age of Jonbenét.
Anna Alejo, News 4.
Drawing. Some of the latest questions about Jonbenét Ramsey's murder are raised by the man trying to solve it, District Attorney Alex Hunter. In the New Yorker magazine, Hunter denied he's giving John and Patsy Ramsey special treatment. Hunter said, "The case against the Ramseys is unfileable right now. The reason? Evidence pointing in many directions." The magazine reports police found DNA on Jonbenét that is not from her parents. Then there's the stun gun question. Sources say injuries on the little girl may have come from a stun gun. The Ramseys deny owning one. But New Yorker magazine says police found a stun gun instructional video in the Ramsey house. The only way to confirm if the weapon was used on Jonbenét would require exhuming and examining her body. When asked if he would do that, Hunter said, "Every rock must be turned over, and if that means exhuming Jonbenét's body, that's what police will have to do." Alex Hunter stands behind the quotes he gave the New Yorker, but he declined to talk with us either on or off camera. So it's hard to tell if he believes Jonbenét's body should be exhumed. Meanwhile, Time magazine reports police have rediscovered a flashlight originally found in the Ramsey house. Why is that important? Well, investigators thought it may have been the murder weapon, but for months they couldn't find it at the police station. According to Time magazine, police have tracked it down and sent it to the crime lab for testing. Whether it's relevant to the case is one more question yet to be answered. Phil LeBeau, News 4, Boulder Valley Bureau.
Number 16, Jonbenét, thank you.
We have made significant progress in this case. This case has become more and more focused, and we're confident that in the near future, and in the near future I'm being, again, elusive on, I'm not trying to tie that down to any specific time, but we feel like this case will reach a successful conclusion, and that means apprehensions.
Chief, notice the word apprehensions. Clifton told reporters this morning to be sure not to focus on one suspect. The indication here in Gainesville is that 2 people could have been involved in the killings that took the lives of 5 students last August. Today, a published report says police are waiting for a DNA blood test to confirm that their suspicions are correct, that they may know who the killer is.
I'm the chief that came out in the first week that we discovered the victims and said I'm confident that we will catch this killer. I think you could probably tell by my demeanor today that if ever I was confident, I am confident today.
Reportedly, one suspect is already in jail. Lending credence to that, a statement by Clifton that the Gainesville community can feel safer today, that it is much safer here. Students heard, but aren't believing.
I don't think they have the Gainesville killer, no. I don't think they will. I think it's going to be like the Bundy case. It's going to be ongoing.
When there's a break in the case, for sure, then I'll feel safe, but not until, no.
At this particular time, we continue to have a pool of suspects. It may even be larger than the pool we reported on yesterday. I'm not prepared to expound on that and say we have 6, 7, 8, 9, but it appears to be larger than yesterday. To say that we have a prime suspect or prime 2 suspects or 3 suspects is very premature. We've not said that within our task force meetings. Despite what's been reported, there's been a lot of erroneous quotes that have been attributed to the task force over the past 24 hours. They're simply incorrect. We are prepared to say at this point that we're continuing to work that pool. We do not have
Humphrey was confirmed early on by the PIOs as a suspect in the case, and that's never changed. When this all comes to light, the public will understand what evidence there is against Humphrey and why the focus on him has been as sustained as it has been over this lengthy period of time.
However,
for a while, but we've never lost interest in Mr. Humphrey, and the fact that Mr. Rowling is now also a suspect would clearly support a very viable theory that surfaced early on, and that was that more than one perpetrator was involved in this series of crime. But, if there's enough evidence to go forward with the indictment. We're going to ask them not to return an indictment unless they are convinced we can prove our case beyond every reasonable doubt in the courtroom. Ordinarily, grand juries are allowed to return indictments based on probable cause, but we're going to ask them to assume a trial standard, if you will. Can we prove the case beyond every reasonable doubt at trial? Because, you know, we don't want an indictment that's somewhat superficial based on probable cause only, that would waste a great deal of resources and lead to some unrealistic expectations on the part of the families of these students or the public at large. So we're going to ask them to return an indictment only if they feel that we could prove it at trial beyond every reasonable doubt.
in the community?
Well, our announcement was that he's a prime suspect. As Bibi mentioned, he's going to have a couple of life sentences looking at him, one in Ocala, one in Tampa. He has 3 prior convictions, and this is someone who's likely to remain in custody for an extremely long period of time. So, you know, we would hope that the university community would do as they have done. They have not pressured us to move at a pace that was faster than responsible. The Gainesville business community, as well as leadership throughout the state of Florida and government and otherwise, have allowed us to move very thoroughly and deliberately, and we very much appreciate that understanding so that we will have an optimal chance for successful prosecution. We've had the evidence for some time. This is not a new announcement as to the potential of 2 perpetrators being involved in the killings. It's been something that was speculated about early on, and we believe there's physical evidence to support that. So that's part of what we'll expect a grand jury to review. Humphrey has not been ruled out as a suspect. He was named early on, so you can draw your conclusion. The fact that he still remains a suspect is whether or not he's number 2. Obviously, the speculation on a 2-person theory of prosecution, for lack of a better term, would not exist unless there was some evidence to support that theory.
It's at times it just makes you want to keel over and cry. And the sad thing is, when it comes down to it, and this eventually will come out, my brother had nothing to do whatsoever. Here, he has suffered. Here, my family has suffered. We've gone through 9 months or so of just unbelievable scrutiny and page after page written about our family, and everybody's trying to find out what a mass murderer is like. And the end result's going to be my brother had nothing to do with it. My family had nothing to do with it. And so I'm scared. I'm scared because I think that they're going to railroad my brother.
You love your brother.
Tonight, the University of Florida Police Department issued an arrest warrant for Edward Humphrey for 2 counts of aggravated assault. Police say it happened on August 25th, the same weekend as the murders.
Bond has been set at $100,000, and the judge has sealed this case, and there's no further information I'm allowed to provide at this time.
Police say the 5 students were murdered by a methodical killer, and today an FDLE agent told us that the bodies were displayed for maximum shock value for whoever walked through the door.
Position of the bodies were displayed, and I think that's the word that's being used, displayed for anyone who entered the room.
Wolf also said the killer went to great lengths not to leave behind the most essential piece of the puzzle.
I don't believe there was any fingerprints that are associated with anyone other than the victims or whatever.
With a search warrant in hand this morning, a team of investigators launched an intensive search at Edward Humphrey's Gainesville apartment. The warrant was sealed so officials wouldn't say much, but one investigator told us they did find some kind of evidence inside. A local hotel that Humphrey's grandmother stayed in was also searched, and investigators have been showing a set of 8 photographs to shoe stores and skateboard outlets at the Oaks Mall. Employees say investigators have asked them questions about Reebok tennis shoes, and some employees recognized a few men in the lineup.
I have seen several of them that were on there, but that's basically all I want to say.
They came in and bought tennis shoes here?
I'm not going to say that because we're not exactly sure. We have seen the gentleman in here before, but that's basically all we really want to say.
I think he's being railroaded. It's terrible.
Elna Lavity says she's received hundreds of letters and phone calls from people all over the country. They're urging her to do something quick to help her grandson.
Many of them lawyers, some of them judges, who say this boy is being railroaded. Do something about it until they get some evidence that warrants the treatment he's getting.
But all the evidence in the world won't convince this Brevard County native that 18-year-old Edward Humphrey is a cold-blooded, brutal killer. She admits he does have problems caused by lifelong beatings at the hands of his father.
He told the children if they told the court, if they told anybody about it, he would kill them.
What kind of
and
man
he
is
would
this?
have.
What kind of man is he?
Atheistic, satanic.
Lavity tells of how angry Edward Humphrey became the night he came home from Gainesville after she knocked his contact lens out and later got a black eye.
He may have been so angry when I couldn't reach the light that he reached over me and I may have fallen. He may have shoved me, he may have hit me, but I don't think he did.
The charge he beat the 80-year-old is what landed Humphrey in jail under a $1 million bond. But Lavity is not going to prosecute. Humphrey's lawyer says that means the state may be forced to drop the charge. But every day Edward Humphrey sits in jail, Elna Lavity worries. She says her biggest fear is that someone will kill her grandson.
With his actions carefully directed, his words closely inspected, Edward Humphrey spoke out today from a written script.
I'm very, very happy to be free from prison today.
Humphrey appeared in Orlando with his mother, brother, and grandmother, each of them equally excited.
He's like my own child, and this is the happiest day of my whole life.
And each of them repeating the theme of the day. The Edward Humphrey you've seen on TV, the wild-eyed man suspected of murdering and mutilating 5 University of Florida students, is not the real Edward Humphrey.
You know, Ed is a great guy, and there's no way that I can really express that to you.
Wearing his usual handcuffs, leg irons, and bulletproof vest, Danny Rolling arrived in court to hear his dying mother continue to testify on videotape about the rough mental and physical abuse he suffered at the hands of his father.
Did there come a time when you thought that the way your husband was treating Danny was inappropriate?
I always felt it was.
Okay. Attorneys for both sides recorded the videotape in May 1992 because Rolling's mother is dying of liver cancer and is too sick to make the trip to Gainesville. Rolling listened quietly, sometimes with his hands folded, as his mother described attempts to get him to go to mental health counseling after he told her that he had another personality.
I think that if I remember right, the way he said it was he had a person.
Then, sometimes taking long pauses, Claudia described how Rolling and his father argued one evening soon after a car wreck, then opened fire on each other.
Danny came in at a crouch, and he told his dad, he said, if you want to kill somebody, kill me, but don't hurt my mom.
After shooting his father in the face, Rolling fled home and soon made his way to Gainesville, where he killed the 5 students. The jury that must decide whether Rolling lives or dies for those murders also heard from Rolling's former girlfriend, a self-described producer and country singer, who talked about Rolling's musical talents, his looks, and his devastating problems with his father.
He would cry, and he would tell me that he couldn't get along with his dad.
He has a very serious illness.
But by bringing up The Exorcist 3, the prosecution tried to show Rolling has a very devious mind. It's a movie about a man who's possessed by a demon named Gemini that drives him to kill. Rolling, who saw the movie just before he murdered the 5 students, says he's possessed by a demon named Gemini that drives him to kill. Coincidence?